One of the most common situations that I find students in doing functional skills questions is asking, do I multiply or do I divide? So the student knows that it's one or the other, but isn't sure which one. So if this is you, then have a listen. So one of the areas where this arises is where we have a conversion question, where a student is either told or they already know that 1 metre is 100 centimetres, and they need to switch between metres and centimetres. And they're trying to remember, do I multiply or do I divide? So the tool I'm going to give you today is going to help you think through what's going on here. The tool I'm going to give you is called a ratio table. So in one column, I'm going to have metres, and the other column, centimetres. And in my first row, I'm going to include the information that I know. Now, to help you think through this, what if I ask you, what about 2 metres? Well, you'll probably say, well, 100, that'll be 200. What about 3 metres? 300. And we can see how we're going on. I said, well, what about 5 metres? We'll see 500. And if I ask, what about 12 metres? What maths are you going to do? And let's have a look. What maths are we doing at each stage here? And hopefully what you can see is that we're taking the number here and we are multiplying by 100. So to go from the number in the metres column over to the centimetres column, we are multiplying by 100. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because our centimetre number is bigger than our metre number. And always in every row in this column here, our centimetre number is much bigger than our metre number because we're multiplying by 100. And so when you're doing a question like this, I want you to just take time draw yourself a little ratio table like this and just make sure that you're happy that you've understood what's going on here. Before you deal with what you're asked to do, just make sure, yes, I've got it, 100, 200, I'm multiplying by 100. And get that secure in your mind so that if I'm asked, say, convert 4.1 metres into centimetres, we don't end up having a panic because we can see we've done this structure that we're multiplying by 100. We could go away, we could do that calculation on our calculator if needs be, and there we are. We could be happy that we've done the right thing. Yes, my number in centimetres is much bigger than my number in metres. So far, so good. But what about if we're asked how many metres a value in centimetres is given? So we're now not going this way across the table. We're having to convert the other way across the table. Well, that's where I want you to think about inverse operations. And the inverse operation of multiplying is dividing. The inverse, the thing that takes us back to where we started. So if going from metres to centimetres, I need to multiply by 100, then to go back the other way, converting centimetres into meters, I am going to be dividing by 100. So here we have in our table a very clear set out of which operations we're doing based on which way we're going. If we go from meters to centimeters, yes, we can see that we're multiplying by 100. And that must mean that if we're going back the other way, we're going to divide by 100. Okay, so far so good. But here's some information that we might get given in a question, which we might find a little more freaky, because instead of 1 and 100, we've got 1 and a decimal number, 2.54. Well, we're going to start the same way with the information that I'm given, that 1 inch is 2.54 centimetres. So if I now ask, well, what about 2 inches? Then the student will probably say, well, it's double that, or another 2.54. So we've just done that on the calculator there, and we can see 5.08. And if I ask, what about 3 inches? So what we see is that each step I'm being asked to add 2.54, 2.54 plus 2.54 plus 2.54 plus 2.54. This is one of the most important principles that I need students to understand, that if we see ourselves adding the same number, repeatedly adding the same number, then this is multiplication. So here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Lots of 2.54. So multiplication is the repeated addition of the same number. So if we ever see ourselves doing this, keep adding 2.54, keep adding 2.54, then that is exactly what multiplication is. Multiplication is the repeated addition of the same number. So what I'm doing as I go from my inches column to my centimetres column is that I'm multiplying by 2.54. And try that out on a calculator, that if we keep adding 2.54 a number of times and then we test it out and we do a multiplication, we'll see that it's the same answer. And this is what multiplication is. It is the repeated addition of the same number. So thinking back to my meters and centimeters example, the next thing we thought about is, but what happens if I get given a number in centimeters? How do I convert that into inches? And the way we thought about that was to think about inverse operations. And the inverse of multiplying is dividing. Multiplied by 2.54, the inverse operation to get back to where I started is 2.54. Divide by 2.54. So again, we can see that we've set up our structure in our ratio table, and it's then just a question of what is it that we're asked to do? Are we given a piece of information in centimeters, or are we given a piece of information in inches? Well, let's take something from here, this width in centimeters. Let's take this one, 47.2. What is this in inches? Well, my ratio table tells me that I'm going this way. I'm going from 47.2 centimeters to a value in inches, so I have to divide by 2.54. I hope that's been helpful to you in seeing which way we're doing the multiplying and which way we're doing the dividing. If you end up doing a question like this, do take a bit of time out, draw the ratio table, use simple numbers like we have today, 1, 2, maybe 5, maybe 10, and start to get an understanding in your own mind about what's going on as we go from one side of the table to the other. And once we've got the multiplication way going, okay, in going from inches to centimeters, I'm multiplying by 2.54. And once we know that that's what we're doing one way, then the other way is going to be the inverse operation, dividing, in this instance, by 2.54. So when you're faced with unusual numbers in a question like we had here, because we started with simple numbers, we'll have developed our sense of what's going on. And certainly, if you end up doing this, repeatedly adding the same number, then that is when you need to recognize, what I'm doing is I'm multiplying. So next time you're in this situation, have a go with the ratio table and see if it helps you. Good luck.